buckle up, because today we're diving deep into one of history's most intense survival stories, the 1972 Andes flight disaster.
You probably know it as the Miracle in the Andes.
Right, the story about that Uruguayan rugby team's incredible fight to survive.
A story that really captures the imagination.
Absolutely, but there's so much more to it than most people realize.
A lot of layers to unpack.
Exactly, and we'll be using excerpts from the Wikipedia article on the event to guide our deep dive into this incredible tale of courage, resilience, and what people will do when faced with the unimaginable.
Should be quite a journey.
Now, imagine for a second you're on this flight, right? But you're not on it as a rugby player, you're a last-minute passenger.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Like Graziella Mariani, who hopped on that plane to celebrate her daughter's wedding,
Wow.
totally unaware of the harrowing journey ahead.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it? The fragility of life.
Absolutely. One decision, one moment can change everything.
And in this case, fate, as it were, involved a particularly treacherous flight path over the Andes Mountains, notorious for their unpredictable weather.
Wait, we're talking about 1972 here. Flying over the Andes then wasn't like it is today.
Not even close. Back then, they were relying solely on visual navigation.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah, a far cry from the GPS technology we have today.
No margin for error.
And on top of that, the aircraft itself, a Fairchild FH-227D.
Go on.
Even pilots nicknamed it the lead sled. They considered it underpowered.
Not exactly a glowing endorsement when you're dealing with towering peaks and unpredictable conditions.
Not ideal, to say the least.
So they're cruising at 18,000 feet, and the co-pilot, Lagura, believes they've passed the crucial turning point near Curacao.
They're supposed to be turning towards Santiago, right?
Exactly. They start descending, thinking they're approaching the airport, but the mountains. Well, the mountains can play tricks on the senses.
Illusions of perception.
Right, and what they thought was their destination was anything but.
This is where things get really bad, really fast.
It's about 3:30 p.m. when they slam into a ridge, and not just a little bump. We're talking 350 kilometers per hour.
I can't even imagine.
The impact was so severe it sheared off the wings and tail section.
And the passengers?
The fuselage, the main body of the plane, it basically becomes a toboggan hurtling down a glacier.
At what speed?
220 miles per hour.
Just as unfathomable.
It finally came to a stop, 2,379 feet below where it first hit.
So not a straight plummet, but still.
No, a terrifying slide down a mountain, and 12 people either died on impact or shortly after.
The chaos, the injuries.
The sheer terror of it all. And yet, for the 28 who survived that initial impact, their ordeal was just beginning. 28 souls, injured, in shock, and facing the brutal reality of survival in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth.
Freezing temperatures, a handful of meager rations, clothing not meant for such harsh conditions. Their situation was beyond dire.
They were miles from civilization, right? Injured, disoriented. It's hard to even grasp the enormity of what they were up against.
And as if the physical challenges weren't enough, imagine the psychological blow.
Oh, absolutely. The mental aspect of this is just...
After 8 agonizing days, clinging to hope, they managed to pick up a faint radio signal.
There's a glimmer, right? A chance.
The news they received was crushing. The search had been called off.
Just like that. Abandoned. How do you even process that? To realize no one is coming to rescue you.
It would be easy to give up at that point. Despair could easily take hold.
And yet they didn't.
And that's where Nando Parrado comes in.
One of the rugby players.
Right, he'd been a semi-professional rugby player, and he became a source of incredible strength for the group. Refused to accept defeat.
So he's the one who rallies everyone, keeps hope alive.
In a way, yes. He kept reminding everyone that their survival depended on their own actions.
Easier said than done when you're facing the very real prospect of starvation.
Exactly. And this is where the story takes a truly harrowing turn.
The decision they made to survive.
Their initial food supply, it was basically gone. They were weak, injured, the cold was relentless.
Surrounded by the bodies of their friends, teammates.
And they came to a gut-wrenching realization. Their only hope for survival lay in consuming the flesh of those who had perished.
The taboo, the moral implications, it's a decision that continues to spark debate and ethical discussions.
It's crucial to understand the role of their Catholic faith in this agonizing choice.
Right, this wasn't a decision made lightly.
Many found solace, even justification, in the religious texts. They saw parallels between their plight and the story of the Eucharist.
The body and blood of Christ offered for salvation.
Exactly. One survivor, Roberto Canessa, even prayed for guidance, for a sign that what they were considering wasn't sacrilegious.
It makes you think about the nature of faith in such dire circumstances, how it can be a source of both comfort and a framework for facing unimaginable moral dilemmas.
Absolutely. And yet, even with their faith to guide them, this decision weighed heavily on them.
And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, tragedy struck again.
An avalanche.
They were buried alive in the fuselage.
8 more lives were lost, including their captain, Marcelo Perez. He'd been a pillar of strength for the group.
The avalanche, it just compounded their despair. Trapped in near darkness, struggling for air, they managed to dig an air hole with their bare hands, but they were more vulnerable than ever.
Their hopes were dwindling with each passing day.
But then they found it, a glimmer in the darkness of their situation, the plane's radio.
A possible lifeline?
It was a long shot, but it was something, right?
It was all they had left.
They put everything they had, physically and emotionally, into getting that radio working.
Every ounce of hope, every prayer was riding on that hunk of metal.
Did they manage to make contact?
They thought they had it. They managed to pick up some frequencies, heard murmurs of chatter.
So close.
But then they discovered the batteries they'd salvaged from the tail section. They were incompatible.
Are you kidding? You've got to be kidding me.
Fate, it seemed, was determined to test them at every turn.
The cruelty of that realization, after all they'd endured, to be so close to rescue, how did they even begin to process that?
It was a turning point. They knew then that if they wanted any chance of survival, they had to take matters into their own hands.
They had to become their own rescuers.
Yeah.
So the expedition for help, that idea started to take shape.
Exactly. Remember, they were working with limited information, clinging to the co-pilot's dying words.
Which were?
He believed Chile was just on the other side of the mountains.
A single piece of information guiding their destiny.
They selected 3 men for this perilous journey: Parado, Canessa, and Vizintin.
3 souls tasked with carrying the hopes of their companions.
But before they embarked, they needed to improve their chances of survival in the brutal cold. They took it upon themselves to craft a makeshift sleeping bag.
Wait, they actually built a sleeping bag? From the wreckage?
Out of necessity, yes. They stitched together insulation from the fuselage, used wire, waterproof fabric from the plane's air conditioning unit.
Ingenuity born of desperation.
It was a testament to their unwavering will, a symbol of hope woven from the remnants of tragedy.
And just as they finished it?
Numitrikadi, he passed away.
Of course. Just as hope emerged, another life was lost.
They pushed forward, carrying their grief and determination with them. 3 days into the expedition, Parado, he was leading the climb, he finally reached the ridge.
The moment of truth.
He looked out, expecting to see the green valleys of Chile, signs of civilization.
What did he see?
More mountains,
Wow.
miles and miles of unforgiving peaks. Canessa was ready to give up, his spirit broken.
I can't even imagine.
But Parado, he refused to yield. He spotted a valley in the distance, a sliver of hope in that sea of white and gray.
So they had a direction, a bearing, but those mountains, they were still a formidable obstacle.
Vizintin, he ended up returning to the crash site. Parado and Canessa needed to ration their remaining food if they were going to have any chance.
So they were truly on their own.
They pushed themselves beyond their limits, fueled by a sliver of hope and the weight of responsibility for their companions' lives.
And after 10 days, 10 grueling days,
They spotted 3 men on horseback across a raging river.
fate finally offering a hand. What happened next?
Parado knew this was their only shot. He frantically scribbled a message on a scrap of paper. "I come from a plane that crashed in the mountains. We've been walking for 10 days, 14 injured, no food, very weak."
A message that sent shivers down my spine just hearing it.
They managed to throw it across the river, this tiny plea carried on the wind.
And on the other side of that river,
A Chilean cattle herder named Sergio Catalan. He found that note, couldn't believe his eyes.
the odds of someone finding them, let alone surviving that long.
It was beyond improbable. But it was real. He rode for hours to get help, to alert the authorities.
Those helicopters, when they finally arrived.
December 22nd, 72 days after the crash. They descended from the heavens like angels, there to lift those survivors from their frozen prison.
It's a moment that still gives me goosebumps. A testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, the will to live.
Their story, though, it didn't end there. They returned to a world forever changed, carrying the physical and emotional scars of their ordeal.
And the world reacted with awe, disbelief, but also judgment.
The cannibalism, it was a topic that sparked heated debate. But many, even the Catholic Church, acknowledged the impossible situation these survivors had faced.
An act born of desperation, an act of survival.
The survivors, they went on to share their story, to honor those they'd lost. They built a memorial at the crash site, a testament to the enduring power of hope amidst unimaginable tragedy.
The Andes flight disaster. A story of courage, resilience, and the extraordinary lengths we go to for survival. It makes you question your own limits, doesn't it? Would you have the strength to endure, to make the choices they made?
It's a story that stays with you, a reminder of the fragility of life, the power of hope, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, a journey into the heart of human resilience and the will to survive. We'll be back next week with a brand new topic. Until then, keep exploring the world around you, keep asking questions, and never lose sight of the power of hope, even in the face of the unimaginable.